We begin in Hong Kong, where voting is currently underway for the region's first legislative poll under new Patriots-only rules. The legislative elections come after Beijing in March passed a resolution for electoral reforms in Hong Kong. The electoral amendment gives China more power over who gets elected to Hong Kong's legislature. Beijing has tightened its grip over the semi-autonomous region following months of pro-democracy protests that erupted in 2019. In today's poll, only 20 out of 90 seats will be directly elected by the public. There are 153 candidates in total, all of whom have been carefully checked before being allowed to run in the polls. Legislative candidates have been vetted by a largely pro-Beijing committee to ensure that only patriots who are loyal to China rule the city. Voter turnout is expected to be low for today's elections, with polls suggesting only 52% of the voters will come out to cast their ballots. Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam, meanwhile, has dismissed concerns of low voter turnout, saying that low voting numbers could indicate that people are happy with the government and does not see a need to elect different lawmakers. Under the new electoral system, the total number of states in the legislative has been increased from 70 to 90. An election committee that previously held only limited powers will now handpick almost half of the council's representatives. Most of the Hong Kong's prominent pro-democracy activists are either in jail or awaiting trial. Democracy advocates and rights activists have accused China of using the new rules to suppress political opposition in the semi-autonomous region. For the first time since 1997, non-members from Hong Kong's largest pro-democracy party, the Democratic Party, submitted applications to be nominated in the elections. Richard Kimber joins us now live from Hong Kong. Thank you for your time and for speaking to us on WION. Richard, this is the first major election since Beijing's election reforms. Critics describe this vote as illegitimate, even as Beijing tightened its crackdown on dissent. What do you make of these elections? Do you think this will help China in further, strengthening its grip over Hong Kong?
That's right. Well, the government here is certainly trying to encourage people to still come out and vote. You can see the banners here behind me from some of the last-minute campaigns from supporters of the candidates. Also on the front pages of the newspapers today, big message for people to come out and vote. And there are public transport passing behind me with big advertising on. Almost every other bus and tram is telling people to do so. But the concern from the government is that people are simply not willing to do so, knowing that there are so few candidates on offer across such a narrow spectrum of the political framework in Hong Kong. There have been suggestions that turnout could be the lowest ever. The government's dismissing that as being a problem. The government, as you mentioned earlier, is even saying that a low turnout would be a reflection of people's satisfaction with the situation here. That's something, of course, that democracy activists laugh at and say that's precisely the reason people are not wanting to come out. But there have been arrests made in recent days of people on accusations of inciting the public not to vote. It's a sensitive topic in Hong Kong because ultimately the leadership here is keen to make sure that if there's a large turnout in the election, it will somewhat validate the whole process by showing that the public is behind the election and is in support of all the candidates who are chosen.
Richard, let's talk more about that. Voter turnout has been estimated at around 50%. Carrie Lam says that people are satisfied with the current lawmakers. What is really fueling this voter apathy or less interest in the polls?
Well, some of the concerns from the public is that they just don't have the same representation that they would have had in previous elections because, as I say, there's such a narrow spectrum of people standing. There's only a handful of candidates standing today who proclaim themselves to be still pro-democracy or independent candidates, and they're up against the vast majority of candidates who are from pro-Beijing parties, much more established political parties who have many more resources at their disposal for their political campaigns. I've been speaking to candidates from both sides of the spectrum. Those who are from the pro-Beijing parties say this is a great opportunity to try and stabilise Hong Kong's politics. Their main campaign message to voters is that if you vote for me, you'll continue to get a very stable, continuous, prosperous prosperous Hong Kong without all of the difficulties that the legislature has faced in recent years with what they call filibustering from opposition parties trying to interfere with government policies. On the flip side, when I talk to the few independent candidates, they say that it's essential that the public still votes for them, because even though there are so few of them, without them being involved in the legislature at all, there simply will be absolutely no opposition voice whatsoever. The government's trying to address some kind of middle ground here in saying that even among the pro-establishment voices there's still a wide spectrum of opinion, but of course from the activist point of view they're concerned that there simply isn't a real and strong opposition anymore in the city, and that this election will effectively confirm that in political terms.
So what is the significance of these polls to China?
What's expected from all the political analysts here is that once this election is completed, and the likely conclusion will be that there'll be a vast majority of pro-government people in the legislature, this will really underline all of the expectations that have been in place for the last 18 months or so, that Hong Kong is being fairly radically now integrated with a mainland Chinese system, both politically and in terms of its social orientation, and this will really cement that process. From a business point of view, the business community is not necessarily too concerned about that. It sees this as an opportunity to stabilise Hong Kong's economy and present more opportunities for investment with the Chinese mainland. But politically, this really does probably act as an underlining confirmation of everything that people have been expecting over the past couple of years, where Hong Kong will become more integrated with the Chinese mainland, and all of the previous upheaval that the city has seen in the last couple of years with political dissent will effectively be quashed once and for all.
Richard Kimber, thank you very much for your insights and for talking to WION today. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.